Good morning, Moravi Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are on Daf Yud Bet Amud Aleph, 4 lines up from where we have the real wide lines on the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav Be'asara Dvarim Nivra Ha'olam. The world was created with, we're used to the words of the Mishnah, but Asara Ma'amarot Nivra Ha'olam, that with 10 sayings, the world was created, Bereshit being one of them. But here is Ba'asara Dvarim, with 10 things the world was created. Be'chokhmah, u'bitvuna, u'v'da'at. This is Chokhmah, Bina, V'da'at. Very much like the Sfirot of Chokhmah, Bina, V'da'at. Actually, in fact, the Maharsha over here draws the similarity between this and what's known based on the Mekubalim, based on the Hakdama, Tikkun Zohar, in the Yud Zayin, that this is the 10 Sfirot that the Mekubalim speak about. This actually has been a very interesting topic. The Rivash, one of the Rishonim, he writes when he brings the words of the Mekubalim of 10 Sfirot, he's like, what is this? You have created like 10 different gods. He says the Christians have 3, the Mekubalim have 10. That's how he puts it. That's the anti-Kabbalah words of the beginning of this era of the Zohar being found and the Kabbalah becoming a very popular view of different things. Again, in the times of the Talmidei Rashba is when we found the Zohar. Zohar was basically covered from us for about 1,000 years. And Maran Chida actually writes, why is it that Kadosh Baruch Hu's Hashgacha had it that Zohar should be covered, and so on and so forth. In the beginning, about 250 years ago, it was actually a very highly debated era of the Gedolei Achronim discussing the authenticity of Zohar and so on. Included in them is Gaon Yabetz, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and others. He actually wrote an entire sefer called Mitpachat Sfarim, about the Zohar. I don't want to say against the Zohar, but about the Zohar, which was put subsequently in Cherem and then was reprinted by someone hiddenly, was put in Cherem again, and 50 years ago was printed again and put in Cherem again. And the Rav Tzadok HaKohen Milublin writes that nowadays anyone that doubts the authenticity of Zohar is considered afikores. But back in the time, it was very, very heated machloket, and it's actually interesting to see the words of some of the Rishonim and Gedolei Achronim about the Zohar HaKadosh. Again, the Marshal, a very interesting tshuva of the Marshal in Siman Tzadi Chet of his tshuvot, Rav Shmuel Luria, he speaks about, he was asked whether or not this is very much time appropriate, that on Chol HaMoed, do you put tefillin? Do you not put tefillin? This is already something that was discussed in the time of the Rishonim. But of course, Zohar HaKadosh, who Bet Yosef Paskins, like in Siman Lamed Aleph in Chot Tefillin, writes that a person that puts on tefillin on Chol HaMoed is chayav mita. So, compares it with what it is, the din of Shabbat, in regards to tefillin. So the Marshal, of course, disagrees with that, and he says we don't follow Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Berov Dvarav Halacha Kemoto. Halacha usually is not like Rabbi Shimon, which is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, aside from Masechet Shabbat, Masechet Eruvin, and so on and so forth. And he writes some very strong words there that even if Rabbi Shimon would be here standing and screaming, you wouldn't listen to him. And the Ben Ish Chai really rips this apart in his Divrei Hakdama, in the Pticha to Rav Be'alim, his Shalot Tshuvot. He says, well, you think Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is your Havruta, that he would be standing and screaming in front of you? This is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And he says, sometimes a person stands on earth and looks at Shamayim, looks at the sun, you think the sun is this big. And that's because you're so far away from the sun, you think the sun is small. And that's that. He says, I'm sure Rabbi Shimon was mochel him in Gan Eden and so on. But this is like, these are some of the contentious back and forth between the Gedolei Achronim of 500-600 years ago about the words of the Zohar, and when it comes to Asara Sfirot and so on. But again, Lemasa the Maharsha over here writes that these are very much aligned with what's known in the world of the Mekubalim as the Eser Sfirot And here we have Chokhmah Bina Vadat. The Vilna Gaon writes in several places, among them in the very beginning of Sefer Mishlei, in his writings about Sefer Mishlei, he writes Chokhmah is pure knowledge, information. Tvuna, Bina is Lavin Davar Mitoch Davar. Now that you have different pieces of information, what you draw out of them, new insights that you understand from knowing and comparison of different pieces of knowledge, that's Bina, and that is the subtotal outcome of having Chokhmah or Bina. It's like a mother and father having a child. The child is that. So that's Chokhmah, Bina, Vadat. So those are the three. Ubekoach, with power, Ge'ara, which means speaking strongly, and not yelling, but speaking strongly in the tone of Musar, so to speak, which we're going to see in the Gemara what that means exactly. The Ge'ara of Hashem, Ubigvura, with power, Besedek, with justice, Mishpat, with judgment, Bechesed, and Rachamim. Now says the Gemara, Bechokhmah u'Tvuna dichtiv. Each one of them have a pasuk. Chokhmah u'Tvuna, it says Hashem bechokhmah yasad ares, koren shamayim bitvuna. So see, the earth and the shamayim were created bechokhmah u'Tvuna. Dat dichtiv b'dato tomod nifkau. Right, the depth of the sea was put together with Hashem's dat. So again, all of these are clearly speaking in the pasuk about the creation of the world. Bekoach u'Gvura, says the pasuk, the first line now. Mechin harim bekocho. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared the mountains with his koach, ne'ezar b'gvura, and he was wrapped with gvura. Ge'ara, the strong speaking of Hashem, is amudei shamayim yirofefu ve'yitmehu mige'arato, that the pillars of shamayim were basically stopped by Hashem's Ge'ara. Again, the Gemara is going to discuss this a little bit further, a little bit more openly. Says the Gemara, Besedek u'Mishpat, those two items of justice and judgment, Dichtiv Sedek u'Mishpat, Mechon Kis'echa, that from language of Hachana, that the Kiseh was prepared by Sedek u'Mishpat, Bechesed v'Rachamim. The last two items, it says, Zechor Rachamecha Hashem v'Chasadecha ki me'olam hema, that forever they have been there. From the very beginning of the creation of the world, the Chesed and Rachamim have been there. Again, elsewhere, we have that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world with din, and he saw that it doesn't stand, right? Or the other Chazal of Hashem was Boneh, Olamot u'Machrivan, Hashem was building and destroying until Hashem was Shitef imo midat Rachamim, right? Din, justice by itself would not, judgment by itself would not stand, the world would not stand until Hashem was Meshatef imo midat Rachamim. Hashem mixed with it the midah of Rachamim. So therefore you see that Chesed v'Rachamim have been part and parcel of the creation from the very inception of the creation of the world. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, B'sha'ash bara kadosh baruch hu et ha'olam, hayam marchiv ve'olech. When Hashem created the world was expanding and going, unendingly expanding. Now, again, this is written 2,000 some years ago, giving us a model of the universe, which we spoke about this in the previous shiur, in line with the Genesis and the Big Bang type of talk, the expanding model of the universe. But it was out of control, so to speak. It was too fast. It was too unstable that HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped it. Like the two balls of shti ve'erev, when you do the weaving process, says the Gemara, At shegar bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem stopped it. Again, the creation was done with words, ba'asara ma'amarot. And therefore, here also you needed a strong ma'amar to put it into a frame that it's not going to be out of control. And he stopped it. Shenemar, as it says, Amudei shamayim yirofefu ve'yitmeu mige'arato, that the pillars of the world were basically put to stop from the Ga'ara v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. V'hainu damar Resh Lakish, and this is what Resh Lakish says. By dichtiv, the pasuk says, "Ani kel shakai." Hakadosh Baruch Hu introduces himself as kel shakai. What is that? This is what when he introduces himself to Avraham Avinu, "Vayomer lo Elohim ani el Shaddai, pere urve goy uchal goyim yihye mimeka umlachim mechalasecha yetzeu." So why does Hashem introduces himself? Why does he introduce himself as kel shakai? Ani hu she'amarti leolam dai. The name of shakai is the name of limitation and framing, so to speak. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the world in a way that it has control. It's not just expanding unlimitedly, because if it would, something that's expanding unlimitedly without control is not stable. So says the Gemara. It's not only by the world that is like that, but says the Gemara, Amar Resh Lakish b'sha'ah shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu et hayam, when Hashem created the sea, the oceans, hayam archiv ve'olech, the ocean also was out of control. It was covering the earth, and the stable earth, the way we know it, would not be possible until HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it a ge'ara and stopped it, dried it. Shneimar goer bayam veyabesheu vechol haneharot hecheriv. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a ge'ara to the yam and stopped it and dried it, which means the limits between the dry land and the sea. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. The very first pasuk of the Torah happens to be a subject of machloket between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, which is a very fundamental machloket actually. Bet Shammai omrim, even though it doesn't look like it, Bet Shammai omrim Shamayim nivreu tchila v'achar kach nivra haaretz. Bet Shammai was created first and then earth. Shenemar, as it says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. It's a pasuk in the Torah. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. First Shamayim, then earth. Ubet Hillel omrim eres nivrat tchila. But he said no, earth was first. Ve'achar kach shamayim, and then shamayim. What do you do with the pasuk? Well, they have their own pasuk. Shenemar b'yom aso Hashem, the day that Hashem made. B'yom asot Hashem Elokim, eres v'shamayim. Eres first, earth is first, v'shamayim is afterwards. Amru lahem Bet Hillel Bet Shammai. This is, by the way, very fundamental. We had right before in the previous parak about Korban Chagigah and Korban Re'iyah, right? Which one you spend more money on? And Bet Shammai said you spend more money on Korban HaRe'iyah. Bet Hillel said no, you spend more money on Korban Chagigah. What's the difference? Korban Re'iyah is Olah. All of it goes to Shamayim. That's the first one. That's the focus. The focus is always on Shamayim. Bet Hillel is more, focused on this world, basically. He says, oh, you have Chagigah, it's eaten by the Baalim. Parts of it goes to Kohanim, parts of it goes to Hashem. So there's more focus on that which the world uses. Again, in the subtotal of the core elements of Machloket Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, this is something that's very much aligned with their general Machloket. It says, we're going to discuss what Shamayim is. So says the Gemara, so which one of them do we go with? Each one of them have a pasuk supporting what they say. So each one of them has to answer the other one. So says the Gemara, Amru lahem Bet Hillel Bet Shammai. Bet Hillel asked Bet Shammai, according to you, Adam boneh aliyah v'achar kach boneh bayit. Which one do you build first? If you have a first floor and a second floor, or you build the second floor before the first floor, the bayit is earth. Shamayim is like aliyah. That's the heavens, is like the second floor. You don't build the second floor before the first. So therefore, logically, it should be first earth. And says the Gemara, how do I know that? Shenemar haboneh b'shamayim ma'aliyotav. Va'agudato al haaretz. You see that Shamayim is called aliyot. It's like a bayit and aliyah, a house and a second floor and a roof. So Shamayim is called ma'aliotav or ma'alotav. So it says the Gemara, that's the argument of Bet Shammai. Amru lahem Bet Shammai leBet Hillel. They also have their taina, they have their argument. Ledivrechem, according to you, Adam oseh shrafraf v'achar kach oseh kiseh. A person, when he wants to make a comfortable chair and a resting place for his foot, which one do you make? Do you make the resting place for your foot first before the chair? The chair is the ikar. Then you want to be extra comfortable. You put the you put the resting place. It says the Gemara, their machloket, their argument with Bet Hillel was that Shamayim is called the kiseh of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Gemara, Shenemar, Ko amar Hashem, Hashamayim kis'i v'aretz adom raglai. Shamayim is my chair, my kiseh, and Eres is hadom raglai, is my resting place for my foot, Hashem says. Chachamim omrim, so that's Bet Hillel B'Shammai. Chachamim say, no, not this and not that. Ze v'ze ka'achad nivru. Both of them were created together. Shenemar, af yadis yasta ares, ve'yiminit b'hashamayim. They were together. Koreh ani alehem yamdu yachtav. Hashem says, I call them and they stand together, yachtav, simultaneously. So they were created simultaneously, says Chazal, says Chachamim. Ve'idach, ma yachtav, and the other two shitas, right? How do they understand this pasuk of yamdu yachtav, that they would stand together? They say yachtav doesn't mean simultaneously. It doesn't mean that they were put together at the same time, but rather ma yachtav delo mishtalfi ma'adadi, that once they are created, they are not going to be separable. They're inseparable. They're always going to be bound together. Delo mishtalfi ma'adadi. Shamayim v'aretz now a part and parcel of each other. But in the process of the creation of them, they were different. The order was different. So it says the Gemara, kashu kraya hadadi. At the end of the day, the psukim of Shamayim v'aretz, Eres v'Shamayim, seem to go against each other, right? Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz is the pasuk of Bet Shammai, right? V'yom asar Hashem Eres v'Shamayim is the pasuk of Bet Hillel. So which one is it? It seems to be contradictory. Says the Gemara, Amar Resh Lakish, again Resh Lakish over here, Keshenivru bara Shamayim v'achar kach bara haaretz. In the actual creation, Shamayim was first and then earth. Uchshenata nata haaretz v'achar kach nata Shamayim. When Hashem set them up, put them in their orbit, so to speak, to be set up as a functional world, that was first earth and then Shamayim. And that's the order of the psukim. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Bara is creation of yesh ma'ayin. Right? There are different languages mentioned in Chumash for the creation. The three main ones is bara, yatzar, and asa. So each one of them is different. They're not the same thing. But simply put, without getting too much into the details, but beri'ah is yesh ma'ayin. When Hashem creates something from nothing. That's only specific for a boreh, for a creator. We don't do bria. Well, Ramchal says we are partners with Hashem in briat shamayim v'aretz. That's a separate issue. But boreh is only Hashem. And then asa is when Hashem takes the chomer, takes what exists already and forms it into something. That's asiyah. So in the first pasuk it says Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. The pasuk of Bet Hillel says what? Beyom aso Hashem eres v'shamayim. So says the Gemara, I think this is the deeper understanding of the Gemara, that by the bri'ah, by the initial creation was shamayim v'aretz, but by asiyah of putting them together as the operational shamayim v'aretz, the way we have it is beyom aso Hashem eres v'shamayim. So says the Gemara, my shamayim, what is shamayim? Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Shesham Mayim. Shamayim stands for the fact that there is water, right? And again, this has been also debated for many generations, and finally they found masses and masses of ice floating in Shamayim, and this Gemara became a big deal when this finding happened. They say, oh, for thousands of years we have been saying this, and everyone laughed at us, and here it is. But Sheshamayim, that there is water. But Matnita Tanam, and again we have this in Rashi. Baruch Hu separated between the water that is mitachat hashamayim, the water that's above, and so on and so forth. Says the Gemara in the Braita, b'matnita Tana, esh umayim. Shamayim is esh umayim. That's the mixture of those words. Melamed she'eviara Kadosh Baruch Hu, and it shows that Kadosh Baruch Hu brought them trafanze bazeh, mixed them together. V'asa me'en rakiyan. That's what the makeup of rakia is. From, again, the two opposites that Kadosh Baruch Hu brought together and created rakia. Shal Rabbi Ishmael, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Ishmael asked Rabbi Akiva when they were traveling together, and he says, it's a very interesting question. You were meshamesh, you served as a talmid to Nachum Ish Gamzu, of the Gamzu Latova fame, 22 years. Now, none of these are arbitrary. 22 years is not arbitrary. Rabbi Akiva, of course, we have learned that one of the big things of Rabbi Akiva was, one level lower than Gamzu Latova. Nachum Ish Gamzu was Gamzu Latova, that this itself is good. Rabbi Akiva was one level lower than that, and he used to say, Kol ma David Rahmana Letav. Anything that Kadosh Baruch, this is one of the pieces that actually made it to the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says the person has to say, Kol ma David Rahmana Letav, right? So that's a level that is more attainable, I guess, that even though I don't understand that Gamzu Letova, but is Letav, is going to be for good. So that's one element that Rabbi Akiva learned from Nachum Ish Gamzu. That people mostly know because of the Gemaras that we have had together. But here's another element of him learning from Nachum Ish Gamzu, which is less known perhaps. And again, even though the main Rabbi of Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Eliezer Agadol, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, together with his pair, Rabbi Yehoshua, which was a peer of the friend of Rabbi Eliezer Agadol, but Nachum Ish Gamzu was also a very influential figure in the life of Rabbi Akiva. And one of the things that we all know is that there was an individual called Shimon HaAmsuni, that he darshaned all of the etin Shabbat Torah. Every time it says et, is coming to Rabot. It's coming to add something. And the Gemara says Shimon HaAmsuni did all of the drashot until he got to Et Hashem Elokech Atira. You should fear Hashem. I said, well, you're gonna add something to fear of Hashem? You have to fear somebody else, right? Or respecting Hashem. And he stopped. Right? No, Prisha, Adrisha. So until Rabbi Akiva came, and Rabbi Akiva said, right? That's coming, the Rabot Talmidei Chachamim, because that's the manifestation of a living Torah is Torah Sheba'al Peh, and the carriers of Torah Sheba'al Peh is Talmidei Chachamim. So where does that Rabbi Akiva get that from? This is the Gemara by us, that he actually got that from Nachum Ish Gamzu. So it says, Shayat Doresh Kol Etin Sheba Torah, Nachum Ish Gamzu used to darshan all of the Etin Sheba Torah, says Rabbi Ishmael, I know. So you were with him for 22 years. Tell me something. Et HaShamayim ve'et ha'aretz, ma hayat doresh bahem. The first pasuk of the Torah is two times et. Bereshit bara Elokim, et HaShamayim ve'et ha'aretz. What was he saying on that? Amareh. Says Rabbi Akiva to Rabbi Ishmael, Ilu ne'mar shamayim v'aretz, hayiti omer, shamayim shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you would just say Bereshit bara Elokim shamayim v'aretz, we would learn that, like a lot of the Avodah Zarah thought, that you know what the power is, Elokim, the pure form of powers of Hashem is shamayim v'aretz. Bereshit bara Elokim, the powers, Elokim, created the world. What are those powers? Shamayim v'aretz. Those are the names of the gods, right? That's how people learn it. So when you say et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, you're making them subjects of the creation, not the poel, not the one creating. עכשיו שנאמר, את השמיים ואת הארץ, בראשית ברא אלוקים, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. So says the Gemara, ואת הארץ, את שמיים ואת הארץ, שמיים, שמיים ממש, ארץ, ארץ ממש. That it's not the names or the kinuim of Hashem, but rather we are talking about the creation of heavens and the creation of the earth. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Ishmael did not let loose. He said, for that argument, it would be sufficient to say, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'haaretz. When you say et, already you cut it off. You don't let any makom, any room for a ta'ut, for a mistake of saying this is the name of Hashem. So just say one. Just say Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'haaretz. Why do you have to say et hashamayim ve'haaretz? What's the second ve'et? Says the Gemara, L'haktim shamayim la'aretz. It's coming to tell you L'haktim shamayim la'aretz. Now this sounds a little bit like Bet Shammai, which again, Rashi, the famous Rashi in Masechet Bava Metzia says that Rabbi Akiva is considered the Talmid of Bet Shammai against everyone else, but L'maseh, it's not necessarily a raya for that because we just learned that Chachamim say, right? Chachamim say what? That both of them are true and it's not a stira. In the creation, Shamayim was first, and in setup, earth was first. So this could be actually very much what Bet Hillel would do with the question of, and with the proof of Bet Shammai. So it says, the Gemara, Michdi, Bashamayim atchil beresha. You start with the creation of Shamayim and then you explain earth. How does that work? If you start with the creation of the Shamayim, start with explaining Shamayim. But the Pasuk doesn't do that. You skip anything about Shamayim and you start explaining the earth. Why is it that the Pasuk explains the details of earth? Rabbi Ishmael brought the example for this. Mashal, the parable is, he asked his servants, come early morning to my door to serve me. So Hishkim, the king, wakes up and he sees matzah nashim v'anashim. He finds women and men. So he was not expecting women to come. The derech is the avadim come, the men come. So who does he praise more? Who does he spend more time speaking about? The women who were not expected and against odds, they came. Those who is not darkam la'ashkim, and they came anyways. So here also the nimshal is a little bit more complicated to understand, but here also the one that was not the focus in the first pasuk is the one that you explained. Now you could also explain it that Shamayim va'aretz, and once you say earth, you first explain the Maaseh Eres before you go to Shamayim. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Oy lahem lebriyot sheroot ve'enan yodot marot. He says, woe to the people who see and they don't know what they're seeing. So says the Gemara, what is that? Omdot ve'enan yodot al ma hen omdot. They're standing, but they don't know what they're standing on. Ha'aretz al ma omedet. What is earth standing on? How is it stable? Al ha'amudim, on pillars. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Hamargiz eres mimekoma ve'amudea yitpalesun. That they're standing on amudim. So amudim al amayim, and the amudim are stable because of the water beneath them. Shenemar leroke ares al amayim. That Hashem basically makes the reka, the surface of the earth on the water. Al harim, and the mayim is on harim. Ma'im al ha'arim shenemar al ha'arim yamdu ma'im. On mountains the waters stay. So says the Gemara, Harim beruach. The mountains are standing with ruach, with wind. Shenemar ki ine yotzer harim ubore ruach. And ruach is besara. Ruach is with the sara. What's sara? Shenemar ruach sara osa devaro. Ruach sara does the words of Hashem. And se'ara tluya bezro'o shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, to tell you that these are not simple understandings of the words of Amudim and the water and the Harim and Ruach and Sa'ara, the Sa'ara is tluya bezro'o to the arms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar, as it says, umitachat zro'ot olam. The Zero'ot Olam is a reference to Zero'ot Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the power of Hashem, and it says Umitachat Zero'ot Olam. Chachamim omrim Al Yud Bet Amudim. Chachamim say there are 12 pillars, Amudim, that the world stands on, the earth stands on. Shenemar Yatzev Gevulot Amim LeMispar Bnei Yisrael. Hashem established the Gevulot Amim, the boundaries of nations on earth, LeMispar Bnei Yisrael, to the mispar of the Shvati, which is 12. V'yesh omrim, and there are those who say Zayin Amudi. There are 7 pillars. Shenemar chatzva amudea shiv'a. When the pasuk speaks about the creation of the world, it says chatzva amudea shiv'a, which means Hashem created 7 amudim for the world. So that's the pasuk in Perek Tet of Mishlei, talking about the creation of the world. Chochmot banta betah chatzva amudei hashiva. Rabbi Bar Shammua says al amud echad. It stands on one amud. With tzadik shemo. The name of the amud is tzadik. Shenemar tzadik yesod olam. Tzadik is the pillar, the yesod, the foundation of the world. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, again, all of these are beyond the scope of our understanding, most of it, certainly beyond the scope of discussion right now, above our pay grade. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shne Rekiim hem. There are 2 Rekiim. Shenemar, Pen la Hashem Elokecha Hashamayim Mushma Hashamayim. That says Hashamayim, Mushme Hashamayim. There is Shamayim and then there is Sheme Shamayim. So there are 2 different levels of Rakia. Resh Lakish Amar, Shiv'ah, there are 7 of them. Ve'eluhen, Vilon, Rakia, Shchakim, Zevul, Ma'on, Machon, Aravot. Now, each one of these, the Gemara is going to bring a pasuk for, and this is something that we would like to explain. This is actually a fascinating part of the Gemara. We will glean it and spend some time explaining the 7 levels of heaven, the 7 heavens that they say. This is where it starts, and Bezrat Hashem will continue in the days to come.